Welcome to another episode of Optometry Profits Revealed. I'm your host, Peter Precht. Today I'm with Dean Thompson, a 40-year veteran that started in the same place that I did in the same year. We both started at LensCrafters in 1986. Dean is the eye guy. He is in Calgary, Alberta. He's had his own place over the years. He's worked with several different colleges, and actually you mentioned at different schools as well across that, and speaking engagements and how you've been teaching over the years. And you've been with Costco for the last 20 years. Without any further ado, thanks for being here, Dean. Appreciate it.
Thanks for inviting me, and thanks for sharing your valuable time with me today.
Well, it's obviously surprising to find out that we have the exact same beginning. At the time that we started at LensCrafters, the teaching material was fantastic. And how we started off our conversations, we both fell into this by default, which I think is in large measure what, as we head down the end of our career, that we want to fix. We want less people to fall into this and fall in love with being an optician after the fact. So education is something that I do want to get into with you. But
absolutely.
But let's talk briefly about the Nigerian gentleman and the symposium that they had just put together recently. What was that called? What were they talking about? It was over several days.
Yeah, it was symposium. So it was Vision 2026. They had a few different speakers on sort of different topics that are relevant for today's optical industry. And you know, it was my part was kind of where does AI intersect with those things that we should keep at the forefront, and that would be customer experience and using the AI for relieving those mundane things that pull us away from the customers. You know, like 80% of the optician's time should be on the sales floor, interacting with patients, educating and helping them with their eye care needs, not filling out reports and doing that mundane stuff that I know I try to avoid.
And they become technique changers too. How do you stagger what you're able to do? How do you take criticism from AI? How do you implement it? You know, those become challenges at a level, at an interpersonal level inside of a practice. And you know, systems is a good way to do it. But talk about resistance. Talk about resistance to that type of technology. In that, did anyone in the forum talk about that? Was that a topic? Or was it more about looking at the technology and thinking, okay, what do we like? What do we not like?
There was one gentleman that it was pretty much all on what AI is, what it can do, and all that great and glorious things that it can do and will do. And I guess I was the bridge between some of the speakers, as you know, I'm for AI, in its place, right? Use it as a tool.
Right.
And I think it can be used very effectively as a tool in multiple different areas, but it should not ever replace what the optician is supposed to do, right? It can't tell what somebody's thinking. It can't look at somebody's face and saying, they're stressed out about this. They don't, how do we explain something on a personal level so that person gets it? Right. And keeping that human connection, we're the decision makers, not AI. We're the decision makers. Let's use that as a tool. Let's use it to find out who our patients are, who's coming in, what do they like, what do they dislike, what are all those stats that we might not be taking, right?
Right.
Some of the
immeasurables.
Yeah. It's like some of the pinch points. I mean, you and I are old enough where, the frame rate comes in and we like that, we like that, we like that. And there was no thought as to, is that actually going to sell, right? Mm-hmm. Who's our patient? So I think AI can help us with that. It can help us be better managers of inventory, better managers of the process. And then, off the camera, we were talking about education. I think for those opticians that are maybe unlicensed, or maybe they're just keen opticians and they want to know more or do more research. I mean, nothing wrong with using AI to help you out with that. And if you come across something, you ask a question, is like, that doesn't sound right. It's just like, just ask another format the same question, see what happens, right?
Right. And that is, to me, that is an inherent problem with AI. It's regurgitating, your own stuff back at you. Talk about the difference in the abilities of a refracting optician in Alberta versus the rest of Canada and the difficulty of implementing that. We talked about geography as being a big one, but there are practicing opticians that refract in Calgary.
Correct. Yeah, there's I think last count within Alberta, there's 26 refracting opticians. More on the way, because through the Southern Alberta Institute of Technology optical program, they teach refracting, and I was a part of building that course and teaching for a time. I think it's leads up to accessibility, addresses some of the manpower shortage that we're all experiencing.
Correct.
Allows patients to get access to prescriptions. Canada's pretty big and pockets of major centers with lots of little guys around. So, some people can travel an hour, half, 2 hours before they even get to the closest optical clinic, whether that's doctor driven or a big box or a chain or whatever.
Right.
So having that ability to address those people is a good thing. And we have a scope of practice. We can only go so far, but we could if we see something, and we're trained to diagnose certain situations that are up to and beyond our scope of practice. We can recognize, we can't deal with that, but we can recognize it, and that gives us the ability to refer to the appropriate doctor, whether it's an optometrist or ophthalmologist. We have that skill. We're classically trained, and so I think it's something that's lacking within the optical industry as a whole, and especially in Canada, and I know other places, as I've talked to other people in different countries, is we seem to work independently from each other. So the three O's are independent from each O, when we should be working together like an eye healthcare team. So similar to you go to the hospital, you talk to the nurse talks to the doctor talks to the specialist. So to treat that person, right? So why aren't we, right?
It's the truth. I'm pleased with the legislation, and we're going to review it tonight as a group. And I think I'm pretty sure we've even invited John Bruni in from Ohio to just want to hear as much input from places that are licensed now, and certainly from leadership or previous leadership in those associations about how to move forward with opticianry. I'm a big fan of connecting in with optometry, obviously, but people are not all in that lane. That there is certainly thrust, to stay separate and strong as opticians, and I think the best way to do it is with practice owners that are deeply embedded in the existing insurance system, which is deeply embedded in the existing ophthalmic dispensing system. So, we were talking a little bit before about online virtual try on, those types of stores, and how there's a small resurgence back into people going and trying on, and being in that venue where is that completely working? Is the virtual try on completely working? People are coming back into places to try on product, and there are groups that are embracing a different way of buying at a certain age level. But you face some different geographical challenges that may have been similar to the group that you were talking to. Not so much Nigeria, which is highly metropolitan, but certainly parts of Africa that have access issues. So it's more than tele, and it's more than just plugging in virtual try-on in a store. How do we get the professionals involved at virtual and realistic levels so that we can bridge some of those gaps and connect some of these systems? That exist in partial ways and not in full ways in a lot of places, I would imagine. Well, just like we talked about with you, where you are, there are people who have access problems on the outskirts or up in the mountains or whatnot, or north of you. Absolutely north of you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think with any technology that's coming out, I think there's a place for it, and if we utilize that technology to offer access to as many people as we can. I mean, I've been on quite a few optical missions to developing countries, but there's the obvious problem is access and finances, but we still have access problems and finance problems in Canada and probably in the States too. I mean, like,
Definitely.
it's not an unusual problem, if we could address the basic needs, and if these technologies identify, oh, there's a person that needs a higher level of care, then it makes it justifiable for that person, that family, or whatever organization that wants to help the underprivileged people get that access.
Right.
I think it's a good thing. I mean, we just got to, keep the core of the industry is like it's a people industry. It's a face-to-face industry. We're there to help manage and eye health issues. So if we're using it and the opticians, optometrists, and ophthalmologists are at the end of the line, then there we go. I mean, use technology where it needs to be used, and don't allow it to take over the human interaction.
Yeah, well, completely. And opticians at the face-to-face level in a dispensary when it comes to frames and discussions and uncovering. Completely understand that. It becomes a relationship, intended or not. I had a conversation a little more than a week ago with Danielle Kroll about a really unpleasant young girl. It's just flat out really, really mean to her. And, in my mind, I'm thinking, shoot, at least she had you. And then she says it. And no sooner does she go, at least it's me. And, opticians are unique like that. That's, as dark as a sense of humor can be behind a closed door, and some of the things that we exchange with one another that are unpleasant, and I don't mean that in a negative way, I mean that in a true way. Sometimes we share, just like I talked about, a patient story that can be very unpleasant, or even a situation that can be very unpleasant. How we face that at a one-to-one level in the dispensary, face to face, as you're getting glasses or dispensing glasses, is kind of huge. Talk very briefly about, because while we're on that vein with that, especially with the group in Nigeria, you mentioned the issues for opticians are similar continent to continent. Talk about that. Obviously, access is one, but maybe elaborate.
Yeah, access is one, and procedures within the clinic. We're struggling with getting qualified people. We're struggling with the patient experience, and where does that break down? Why does it break down? Inventory control issues, and just basic little stuff that disrupts the business. I mean, I'm an eye care coach, so I take that 40 years, and I kind of go in and help you out. So it's not, this format is gonna, here's the magic pill. There is no magic pill. It's discovering the journey of what's going on in your clinic, why it's going wrong, where it's going wrong, and we're saving small percentages here and there, but you add it all up and it becomes a decent income, right? So in industry wise, I talked to people from the UK. I connected with them, Australia, Nigeria, US, and similar issues in every country. Manpower, skill sets, inventory controls. How do you deal with the big box guys? How do you deal with staying afloat? I mean, pressure on the little guy, the independents. When I had my own store, I had some friends that worked in the big box, and I sold a line of, I was Serengeti, and I can get Serengeti. I couldn't even get them for what they were selling them for to the public. So what I did is I just phoned up my buddy who worked at the big box, and I says, okay, go when you have time, just go through all the Serengetis that you have. And then when people came into my clinic looking for this frame, is I can't get that frame, sorry. Why would I compete on price? I'm going to lose all the time if the big box guys are buying 1,200 frames of one style, one brand, or one model. Then how do I compete against that? Even with a buyer discount, I couldn't touch it. So, finding ways to compete and succeed without trying to duplicate what you're seeing in a big box guy, because you're not going to win.
Well, and even in Serengeti's case, they've had a real challenge. I got to choose my words carefully here. Well, I know who they deal with online, and it is someone highly removed from the industry. So the human interaction of being an optician that you and I have been discussing this, during this interview, is completely alien to this gentleman. He's from another field. He doesn't care. He has technically a dispensary, but there's no tools in it. You don't. There's no hot box. There's no frame warmer. There's no understanding of the craft or care to. Because he's got his 8 or 10,000 group that he sells prescription. So imagine if you're Serengeti, you pride yourself on the super high quality, but you're saddled to this as your number one online. It's got to be a miserable, stinking headache for them. Especially at a lab level. But
what's it doing to their
what's it doing to their brand? Or whatever, right? Has a higher education level. He believes that he's an optician, and he's not in any way, shape, or form. But that points to a lot of what's going on in our industry because of the lack of oversight, because of the lack of education, the lack of certified states. Anybody can do this in a lot of places. Whether they know anything or not. That's not true in Canada.
I mean, in Canada, we're all licensed. Although there is a loophole, like some of the ODs who run their own clinics, they can hire somebody to work underneath their license. And so it's an unregulated person doing the job of an optician. They just can't call themselves an optician. But
if they don't know what they're doing, they certainly wouldn't want to refract anybody if they have no idea what they're doing. I mean, you're not going to keep your doors open if you can't do that.
But I think some of the ODs, I think they're short-sighted. I think by having a licensed optician in the store, that gives it credibility. So go back to the nurse, the doctor, the specialist idea is like. That gives the whole clinic the credibility, right? You as an OD, you don't have to refract and sell from the chair and gobble up that valuable chair time when you have a fully trained person on the front. Do they all need to be licensed opticians? Maybe not, no. But, you should have somebody out there that is skilled enough to deal with those issues, to analyze the problems that customer's coming in. Is this a remake worthy? Where does that problem start and finish? Is it something that can be easily done by an adjustment? And when we have untrained or unskilled people, the first thing they do is take out the shotgun. Well, let's just remake it and hope it works.
That's true.
But that causes money.
Completely. But if you don't have experience to diagnose, okay, here's the doc's prescription, here's what I'm looking at, here's the difference, here's why this is happening, this is what we're going to do. It may not be just duplicating the problem. And again, these are things that are taught, learned, implemented. We're talking about is practical, use of practical, in practice opticianry. Talk about that with the part of whatever the process may be, because I don't know, and I don't want to get too elementary, but how long is the practical part of becoming an optician in Canada, and are Are there sponsorships that are involved with that? How does that go?
Yeah, so there's a couple formats. One is full-time. You're in the chair being taught by an instructor who's been in the business for many years. The other format is you work on the job and then do distance ed. So a lot of your stuff is online. And then you're hopefully the person in the clinic that you're at is a mentor that can transfer their knowledge to you. It doesn't work that way all the time. So there's a problem there, for transferring that information. And even if somebody comes out, let's say they're in a full-time course, they come out, and they've done their 2 practicums with on the job to gather that real world experience. I mentored many opticians, and I tell them is, look, you're coming out, you'll know the basics, the good stuff, but it's going to be another 2 years before you're good, and then you'll just carry on from there. And it's just like, listen to what the senior opticians are saying and doing, and ask questions.
Right.
A lot of us, like you and I, are been around long enough. We've probably forgot more than we remember, and but if you ask us a question, we'll probably pull it out of the cobwebs and be happy to share, right?
Right.
So I think even down in the States, I know there's some states that are unlicensed and unregulated, but there's no reason why those people doing that optical or optician type job should not be eager to learn. There's many places to learn and to build those skill sets and to build up the industry. I mean, if you neighboring state that's one licensed and one that's not licensed, I'm sure that the unlicensed state, they're not making a great salary.
Yeah, that's definitely a problem in the western half of PA. There'll be people that get their time in and a lot of their practical understanding and knowledge, outside of and north of Pittsburgh, but their whole time they're schooling and studying so they can pass their boards in Ohio and get a job there. I mean, why wouldn't you drive an extra 20 miles or even move an extra 20 or 30 or 40 miles away to make another $15 an hour or something? It's a lot. It's a perpetual problem actually for the entire region. And I don't have an answer for that. But I do want to back to the education that you were just talking about. I really want to tip my hat to people that maybe weren't my favorite. Very specifically, Warby Parker and now Walmart. Walmart is investing heavily in the education component, not just externally but internally. They're seeking employees that have aptitude to understand optics and giving them an opportunity to head down that avenue. And I love it. I completely love this idea. The earlier we can introduce things, the better. We mentioned this a few minutes ago. You and I had no idea. We had no idea that optician work existed. When I was 18, the summer out of high school, I was fortunate enough to actually polish samples. I actually worked with metallurgical engineers where my father worked at Martin Marietta. And part of my duty was to polish samples. So of the 480 some people that applied to work at Lens Crafters, you've got polishing experience. Let's bring him in. And that's exactly how it went. So next thing you know, a year later, my brother's in it, and my brother spent 37 years there. 37-year career. That's one of the neat things about what we do. People do tend to get involved, similar to us. Stay involved. The gratitude of what we do is deep. It's personal. It's genuine. But teaching others is a little bit of a different thing. Talk about eye care coach right now. Talk about what your goals are, what you do, how you view things.
Yeah. So as I was reaching the end of my career or something, I had a break in between instructing at SATES, and with work, I had to take my holidays. Otherwise, I get shut down for the holiday season. I had a month off, so I went to Mexico and hung out for a month. And I think, what am I going to do? I mean, I love the industry. I love what I do. How do I take 40 years of acquired knowledge and just hit the flush button. I just can't do that. So what can I do remotely that allows me to be wherever I want to be, and still help the industry be better than when we got in? Like when we got in, it was just
Wild West.
It's like, here you go, see you later.
Oh, yeah.
So taking that 40 years, so all the things that I've succeeded in, all the things that I failed at and learned from. So why should you go through those same mistakes? Why should you go down that road that I know is a dead end and, do the Thelma and Louise off the end of the cliff? So what I'm doing is I'm here for the independents, whether they're an optician, optometrist, whatever the case may be. I think the industry needs to be bigger than, holding out the shingle and saying I'm better than you, and that's not where I am at. There's value in everything that we do, and we have our place, we have our skill sets. But let me use those things that I've acquired to pass on to you. There are other coaches out there. There are other coach systems out there that says, oh, you follow this program and you'll succeed. And I think, no. I mean, no two businesses are the same. Why you got into opening up your own businesses is your idea. Like, is it there to give you and your family more time or more things to do? Send your kids to, maybe you're an optician and you want your child to be an optometrist or an ophthalmologist, right? So utilizing my skill sets and my toolbox of knowledge for 40 years and passing that on and being a mentor and sounding board to you and your business. And as a coach, I have no financial interest in your business. We'll bounce stuff back and forth. I'll give you my suggestions, perhaps, or brainstorm together to create something that's unique to you and carry on. I mean, it's about succeeding. It's about leaving this industry better than you and I found it many years ago. And that's what we all need to do is give back to that industry that has given us the career for 40 some odd years.
The relationships are real.
Mhm.
They last. The
Yeah.
components are deep. It's a moving moment to be a part of when somebody sees clearly
Mm-hmm.
or is seeing clearly again. It hasn't been. I don't think that that's the case overall. I think that people that have an interest to stay in opticianry obviously do it for those reasons, but they obviously have other things that drive them forward too. Let's talk about technology over the course of your career and some goods and some bads. Because I always like to ask people, what have you seen now in the past that was great, fantastic, that was new maybe to you at the time? Is there anything now that you want to talk about that's new or bad or ugly today? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, over the years, I mean, there's a huge variance in technology from 40 years ago. And, I think the good and the bad, I mean, like sometimes the industry is more concerned with marketing than it is medical issues, right?
Amen.
So like many years ago, the one that pops in my head right now is the blue anti-glare came out. Oh, it's like 99% transmittable and it's harder to see and less glare, and then it went away, and then it came back as blue light filter, and it went through its cycle, and it's definitely not my thing. I mean, blue light is circadian rhythm driven. So, a pair of glasses not going to fix that. But we got to get down to the medical side of things and not just creating products to create products, right? Or, I think
they
that
really thought that they had something, even preliminarily to
Mhm.
Blue Tech and these others coming through. In my safety days, there was always an exploration to put tints in front of those that were working graveyard shifts or you yellowish or whatever bright, and stop them from like wanting to fall asleep halfway through there because everything else in the world is wide and awake when they're supposed to be sleeping. So there's only a certain group of people that's palatable for, to be quite honest with you.
Mhm.
And again, I think they were trying to get the most out of whatever. The productivity is lower. Most factories actually reduce production in those hours because they know the production drops. So it's kind of, I mean, it's like does that work better that way? Just doing less when there's people that are half awake, or So there's always been a little bit of an interest that circadian could connect to eyewear, but there's never been any constructive proof that it ever did, like you just said. So your critique is kind of fair. Well, not only that, but the articles that I mentioned this when I was talking about Danielle, I can't cite the exact one. There's one or two major articles that came out, I think 23, that flat out debunked the whole circadian rhythm aspect of any blue light blocking. Like you said, that's a different animal. Probably not going to be fixed with eyewear, ADHD, whatever may be the case. There's a few other things that are involved there.
But I think technology. I mean, we have to explore, but if we explore is great, and if we find that it works, great. If it doesn't work, then just be honest and say it didn't work, right? Nowadays with AI coming at every angle, you're either scared crazy about what it can and will do, and some people are afraid that it's going to take over the industry, and I think we as the industry people and in all the three O's, I mean, let's harness that. Let's harness it for the good and use it for the good, but don't let go of why we're actually here. We're actually here to interact with those patients and to have that personal relationship with those patients. Use technology where it's supposed to be used. I don't see AI taking over the industry. We were talking off cameras many years ago, laser surgery came out. It was supposed to wipe out the industry. Obviously, it hasn't. Implants are a thing. They're not taking over the industry, all these things. So, if I, as a business owner, I would look at my business. Where do I need to stop those profit bleeds? Is AI an answer to plugging those profit bleeds? And in what form should it take? I've talked to a few people that they're reaching out to me because I'm connecting with independent people, and they want to use me as a funnel to tout their AI, and that's fine. It's always good to me. I mean, I'm a kind of a techo geek too, and I want to know more. But using it where it's supposed to be used is sort of my reply to them. And it's like, okay, so if we could use AI to identify who needs to be called back, but don't let the computer phone that patient back. You, as an optician or a staff member, need to phone and connect with that person on a personal level. That's what's going to separate you from the rest of the guys.
Well, I think of the Saturday where you're arriving and you're listening to messages and the book's full, and that family of four just canceled. So you got the big void between 10 and 1.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? That's what AI is for. Get those calls. Hit everybody that was recent. Anybody that recently searched. Get them in. Fill them.
Yeah.
Because the reality is you're going to be too busy doing other stuff until the dead time is there, and it's useless at that point. It's useless for you to be doing the reaching out. So involve AI in a way where you can reach out and you can be, like you said, you can be there for the call, but get everything initially going. Get it all lined up so it's just push, fill the void. Push, fill the void. And those are ways that AI is connected. That can happen. That's just a small example, but that's not used. That what I just described doesn't take place. But that I'm aware of, and it should.
It should.
But I do think AI, the perception of AI replacing humans. While I don't fear it for our industry, I fear the perception. It's if there's a single thing that irks me where I am about AI, it's that. But almost like I had talked with in my interview with Dimitri, I take criticism better from AI. Very seriously with podcasting or anything else. I'd rather hear from AI. And
I use AI a fair bit, and I use it in creating my content. Here's an idea. Let's build it out. And it does things quicker than, like, I don't even know if I would be a coach if I had to do it all by hand.
That's true.
Do the heavy lifting. I love to travel. I went to Colombia for 3 weeks, and I used AI to plan my whole itinerary. So,
Awesome.
it's good if used right. But it's scary, perhaps.
You don't know. Yeah.
You don't know. It's a new thing, and nobody knows exactly what it's going to do or how it's going to do. But I think that the pendulum will swing, and then it will swing back, just like other things within the industry have done.
Right.
Online shopping and all these things. What's this new exciting thing, and then it eventually calms down and it finds its niche in the market. But if you're a keen business person and you're looking at your business and how do you survive in that environment, and what do they do well, and then how can you counteract that? And same thing with, how does the independent person compete against the big box guys or the big chains? Find out what they do, what they don't do, and there's your niche, right? You can survive quite well with creating a unique niche, and AI can help you distinguish who your patients are and what their likes, dislikes are. It can help you manage your inventory, manage what you offer your patients. It can track all those. We sold twice as many female frames as male frames. So next time we order, we're going to order more female frames, and they were this, and this. You put all that into your inventory and tell AI to search that out. And what's the trend? You'll use that to your advantage. It's a tool. It's not going to replace you, but it's going to allow you to do your job better, hopefully.
It could recraft a very basic message to speak to a group that's more pertinent that you may not realize is right in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
Say, for instance,
exactly.
Obviously, if you had a whole bunch of ranchers, actual ranchers, not like small home ranchers, that were coming in, you have a clue who people are. They're all wearing hats and boots, and that's what they do. But if you're in an urban environment, it can be a blurrier picture. So getting that information in a clear way, so you know exactly who you're speaking to. You and I were mentioning earlier. Sometimes you'll think of a patient exchange, and you can macro it. Just because you saw 2 of them in the last 60 days, it's not a trend. It's just you just happen to notice or something.
Yeah.
And that can happen, so you don't want to get swayed one way or the other. So AI has a wonderful use, all types of technology, I think, have wonderful uses to guide that ship and craft maybe how you're going to put your next message together, just like you were talking about.
Absolutely. And some of my other podcasts, like the AI note takers, so one of my offerings to the people on that webinar was, take one of those apps. They're free for 7 days or whatever, and get the permission for that patient. Maybe it's a good patient of yours, and don't mind helping you out to make the clinic better, whatever. And start the recording from the reception desk and all the way through to the final payment transaction. And then, I was saying, send it to me. I'll analyze it, and I'll tell you where you're good, where you're not good. But you can use AI too, like upload that to AI and say, where could I make this better? How do I make this transaction and this patient journey better without sounding like a robot? There's been a fad out there, the scripting, where everybody in the clinic says the same thing because they think its consistency is going to win. But, what does that sound like to that patient or patients in the office when they hear the same thing being said 10 times? So you're just a number. You're not a person. That's going back to that transactional way of thinking, but using that AI to script, and then taking that script, and then each optician creating their own way of saying the similar thing, right? So that it's not robotic.
Right. I think that's actually a beautiful story. And that kind of connects a whole lot of what we've been talking about to be able to still have control, but to remove some of the mundane.
Mm-hmm.
It's oversimplifying it, but that's kind of what you were describing. I mean, it's not. It isn't quite that simple or that black or white, but that is a huge part.
No, but if we simplify it, it's just understandable, right? So,
right, completely.
And I think I think AI could help with the educational content, right? If your store or clinic is heavy on the new optician or untrained, unlicensed optician, AI is good enough where you're gonna get some good answers. I mean, it may not be 100%, but I mean, double check. They comes in, and you don't necessarily want to use AI in front of the patient, but I mean, like, okay, these are the concerns, these are the problems, and you go, Peter, let me ponder that. Let me touch base with my colleagues, and we'll get back to you, and then just chat with AI and see what the diagnosis it gives, and then use it as a tool to learn if you don't have a senior optician in your clinic. That could help create some additional education for yourself, right? So,
completely. And if you don't know, you don't know.
Yeah.
I mean,
there's still stuff I don't know.
Right, exactly. Right.
Well,
no question. Well, there's by proximity. I have dealt very limitedly with compound prism in my life.
Mm-hmm.
I can count on one hand the number of times that I've fit adjusted, dispensed that out of a doorway. Well, it doesn't make me a complete novice, but it certainly doesn't make me an expert by any means. So there's a lot of different things that are, take. I don't want to say take with a grain of salt, but a lot of what we've been talking about is coming back to the relationship connection, the relationship building, the trust that develops, and the ability to carve and create scenarios based on that. You just mentioned something really kind of interesting where you were talking about, well, here's AI's analysis, and then maybe here's mine. That'd be kind of cool. Mm-hmm. To just draw the comparison there, to just look at the two, yeah. Like at halftime when you're seeing stats of the two teams, that would be kind of cool to be able to, go through a basic assessment process and see what Dean might recommend differently or the same.
Yeah, actually, it reminds me of a story. One of my colleagues reached out. She was getting back into RGP lenses, and she reached out to me with a question, and I I don't do RGPs anymore either, and I think I know the answer, and then I she sent me a screenshot of the question, and the answers were A, B, and C, and I took that screenshot, uploaded it to AI, and says like, which one's correct?
Well, that's a
I shot it
thing.
back to her,
and
then said, "This is the answer."
Some of the principles aren't the same. It's so much smaller. Getting it in and out's a different animal. You're dealing with keratoconus stuff, and that's more than likely that's different. It's a different animal, no question. I did have the fortune of working in a practice where a doctor probably had two a month. It was the RGP wearers were different animals. First of all, it's all they wore. I mean, they had the cheapest thinking glasses because they popped them out last minute. It was just to get them from the bed to the bathroom or whatever. Mm-hmm. But they also took very good care of the product. Probably for that reason. But yeah, RGPs, that's a weird, that's kind of an older niche or an older, expert.
Yeah, I mean, it's part of our industry. I mean, when I was instructing, I mean, I had to relearn some of that stuff too, and just because you don't use it, you lose it. But the good thing about being taught is, once you start to dive back in, you start to get rid of the cobwebs in the head, and you start to, oh yeah, now I get it. I remember this, I remember that. And we could use AI to brush up on what we don't remember. What I think, but RGPs are a small niche market. You could do quite well with that if you implemented that into your business, and especially if your competition around you is not doing it, there's a market for that, right?
I actually think there's a portable market for that. Like, I think somebody could go city to city and do that. If you're an expert and you're really good at it, I think there's few ODs going down the road to deal with it. I mean, my experience in the practice that I was in, where even though there were maybe 2 or 3 a month, they were back multiple multiple times, especially with any kind of refit. So I think that they were a challenging contact lens fit at all. And I think finding docs that are on board to deal with something that's a challenge routinely.
Yeah, I mean,
who wants to deal with that? It's like monofits, like those monofit docs.
Yeah.
There's not many of them either want to do that.
Mm-hmm. But when I come across an OD that wants to or does fit RGPs, I'm saying, why are you doing it and not the optician out front?
That's a good
We're
question.
making less money, and if chair time is valuable, right? That's where your money is coming through the door. And if and RGPs are notorious for multiple visits and multiple chair time interactions. So if we're looking at a business and we're trying to maximize profit bleed, that's one area where you could capitalize, train, that optician. If they haven't done it for a while, then there's avenues to train, and there's avenues to learn how to do that well. And I have a good buddy who that's all he does is assesses RGPs. Right?
That's cool. In Calgary,
there's a potential for profit.
Is he in Calgary? Is he?
Yeah. Yeah, cool. He's been in the business even longer than you and I put together.
I believe that.
And he works on on the side. That's his side business. He's got a huge clientele because not that many people deal with RGPs, or they're hard to find. And then you got to find one that knows their stuff, right? So that's his whole side business.
Cool.
3 days a week, I think he's working RGPs and sclerals.
A number of years ago, I've come across a gentleman down in Maryland whose entire, he lived on the road. Which wasn't for me. But his entire thing was cleaning 4-opters and recalibrating your lensometer.
Mm-hmm. It's part of the biz.
Individual place. Probably walked in the door, made $600 or $700 that day. Walked out the door and it was all service. Can't complain.
Yeah. Yeah.
And how many of them are even out there now? See, that's something that I wonder how automated it can successfully go. And, are we going to see robots do that type of work? Yeah, which could well happen.
Yeah, I don't know. I know, the doctor that works in our clinic, they just bought new machinery, and the old machinery, nothing really wrong, but I think we're in that just like buying your new iPhone, it's bigger, it's better. I don't know. But it does the same thing, right? So is it going to be a throwaway society where we're developing these machines, and then a couple of years down the road, you've maybe just paid it off, and now you got to buy a new one for twice as much?
Yeah, a lot of the equipment aspect of our industry falls into that vein, and honestly, I do want to explore on this podcast. I think that that's something that is probably a wise thing to dive into, because at what point is refurbishing worth it? I'm sure they've quantified it pretty effectively to just get better off. You were paying that bill anyway. So much for thinking you weren't going to. So I can see the frustration on the ODs, side. But the other side about our industry is that technology comes in every 3 seconds. There's a new lens design. There's a new coating design. There's a new, especially with digital. Digital and the array of specialty product that you can build and create, and all kinds of interesting things that you can do. But it can be overwhelming. And that is a reality, I think. So the education at the right levels and how that gets staggered, I think, is pretty important. Very lastly, before we go, I just want to ask quickly about that. How is that handled in Canada? In the States, there is such thing as an ABO master. Is there a master level in Canada? How is that defined?
Yeah, there's no regulated title of master. Just basically, it's optician, contact lens practitioner, refracting optician. There's a few different terminologies. There's a few regulated terminologies. The master is not in that classification. I obviously, within the industry, somebody's got as many years as we both do. One might say that we would be in that realm, but I wouldn't say I'm a master optician. At least not openly.
No, we
You know,
touched on that. We touched on that. We're learning every day, and
yeah.
it's not just with new technology. A lot of times it's with processes, how things go. We were just mentioning like doing a comparison of like, here's Dean's assessment over that period. Here's AI's assessment over that period. I think
Mm-hmm.
that's an interesting use for AI, and I think that those are the ways to explore working with AI, in our industry, which I think is certainly at education levels. I don't know the actual qualifications or what is involved with becoming a master optician. Unfortunately, I don't think it's highly specific. I think the specifics kind of go out the window once you pass the ABOC and the NCLE. And I'm a fan of creating tiers that are highly specific and highly practical. That's okay. Make it tough. Make it hard. Make it proper. Some of the best lessons I've seen are when somebody is handed a mangled frame. Let's work through it. Let's get this thing back to a functioning level for whoever, ran over with a car or tractor or whatever the heck happened, because that's part of the job.
Part of the job, and I'm sure you have same stories. I mean, you've seen opticians that have been around for quite a long time that can't adjust a frame if their life depended on it. And there's some that tweak, and there you go, and the patient says that's perfect. So
and then there's others where their hands just don't, or their thumbs,
yeah,
that's real.
But I remember, just jogged my memory. It was like I was mentoring a student optician on practicum, and I was close, and the patient had the frame to be adjusted, and he's adjusting away and trying it on. No, then readjust. And, about 10, 15 minutes go by, and he's like, okay, I give up. Dean, do you want to take over? And I just went and put it on. And she said, that's perfect. I was like, and he goes, I said, yeah, but that's years and years of how many millions of adjustments later, right? So exactly. I said, you'll get it. You're working out. You did good. You got close, But that's the difference between somebody that's new and somebody that's been around far too long, maybe.
It's not far too long. There's a passion.
There's a passion. I still love what I do, and like I said earlier, I want to take this and give it to you. I full-heartedly behind leaving this industry better than I found it.
Right.
It's given me a lifelong career. I mean, who can say they've been in one industry for 40 years? Not that many of us, right?
That's true. Opticians stay. The others that stay a lot are ophthalmic techs. And obviously optometry is their profession. They come out with so much stinking debt. That's what they're going to do. We've talked for an hour.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah, it has been great. I really have enjoyed this. In the show notes, we'll certainly leave links to connect with you. You're the eye care coach, the eye guy.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you wanted to leave the audience with as we head out the door?
Yeah, if you're looking at your business, and finding out, I wish it could go a little bit better, or I don't know what's going on, like, reach out to me. Yes, this is my side business, but I want to help you out. If we can correct those problems with a free 30-minute call, great. I'm happy. Right? It's when we both win is where my heart lies. If we can make this industry better and stronger, then I've won already. If just have a question, reach out to me. I'm happy to do what I can. And if you want to dive deeper, then that's what the eye care coach is all about. So
awesome.
Reach out, touch me. If you're a student, if you're been in the business for a while, you don't know what, so just let's shoot the breeze like we did today for an hour. It flew by.
Absolutely. And all of your contact information, like I said, will be in the show notes, and we'll certainly promote this as heavily as we can. I think that we're going to have other discussions going forward, because I want to connect other parts of Canada with that you're doing in Western Canada. And I do want to talk more about refracting opticians. There's a lot more questions I have about that. We'll go down that road in another interview.
I'd be happy to do part 2, 3, 10, whatever the case may be. Even like I think off camera, we sort of chatted over the email about maybe a panel discussion. I think that'd be an awesome thing to do.
I think that is a really good idea, especially when we know that you've talked. You had presentations with the UK. You've had sessions with the UK. You've had a recent session with the optician that was in Nigeria, amongst other places in Africa, and that issues are similar continent to continent. If we can lay them out very clearly and connect smooth ways of making, breaking down barriers, making processes easier in any way, shape, or form for anybody, it's a win. Like you said, pass it forward. That's what we're
pay it forward. The best thing the next generation can do is do something like we're doing now. Is like be invested in your career, be invested for the future of that career. Help your colleagues be better. Right. That's what it's all about. Pay it forward. Help people out with their eye healthcare needs, and let the 3 O's work together like we should. If other O's out there want to connect with me, and how do we manage that? How do we make that happen? I'd be all over that.
Well, that is absolutely going to be happening at a legislative level. So I think it's going to naturally extend into all of them connecting into what we do. I see a lot of gaps between ophthalmology, optometry, and opticianry right now. And some of those have been forged by the existing system. Some of them have been forged by insurance. Some of them have been forged by patient care. There's 1,000 reasons. Geography, there's so many things that we've talked about. But bringing them together in every way that we humanly can, starting digitally, connecting in on the ground at any practical levels, makes all the sense in the world. So that is going to happen. It's probably in your lifetime, and then probably another thing that we're going to end up passing on. So, thanks again, Dean. This has been absolutely wonderful. This has been another episode of Optometry Profits Revealed. I'm your host, Peter Precht. Thank you so much for visiting us. Any technology questions that you want to know in depth about your practice, don't hesitate to take the profit prescription quiz behind me. Thank you so much, everybody. Take good care.